You know, playing RTA every season, I always hear people say, "Oh, Cleve is so OP," or "Man, it sucks being turn 2, nobody ever understands the struggle." But at the end of every season, one player never fails to make it a top 10 playing the exact opposite of Cleve. And that player is Korea server's Uigang, previously known as Dom, playing in this year's E7WC. Uigang is Korea server's top 3 player, and I think he's a specialist in playing the tank down playstyle. In today's video, I want to highlight Uigang's dominant performance during Korea server's preliminaries and how his style of tank down is so strong, while conceding the biggest advantage in a turn-based game, the much coveted first turn. Hopefully, this gives us slow bros in the community something to think about, a little bit of motivation, and to get those ranks that you really want, and it really isn't that far out of reach, even without speed gear. Now, we've all seen Tank Down versus Cleve. Sama played a mean hand at Tank Down into Cleve in his preliminaries versus Elixad in the EU qualifiers, but what I really want to focus on in today's video is Uigang's specialty, tanking it down and defending versus Standard, the most adaptive playstyle in RTA, versus Nonesis in the finals of the E7WC Korea Prelims. Coming into this set, Uigang needs to defeat Nonesis to reach the main stages, who defeated his previous opponent Merit in a clean 2-0 fashion with the same style of slow, steady, and methodical play. While Uigang had to steady himself a little bit versus unlucky FGO, he looked a little bit shaky, but steeled himself and managed to prevail with his favorite style, tank down. So I'm expecting a bit of a mirror match of this tank versus support. So Lua Zio here ends up being his pre-bans, telling me he wants to capitalize off of Conqueror Lilius's dominant performance with his first pick. Nonesis expertly reads that and bans her accordingly, alongside with Last Rider Crow. The main thing to note here is that all of these units have skill sets that really speed up a match. Now, we're likely going into a drawn-out match of attrition, so crowd control and sustain is the key here. Remember that. Now, with these units off the board, Uigang is going to spend that first pick to pick up Hand Guy, Mediator Koeric, since he is both a damage buffer and a cleanser. With his passive to shed a turn of debuffs, he is the safest first pick here, and he prepares your draft against any amount of incoming debuffs. So once again, relating back to what we said, crowd control and sustain. Nonesis is going to respond in kind with Airwall and Destina here. Airwall can strip buffs off of Hand Guy's teammates and provide a lot of damage mitigation to her team with not only the barriers but also the escort buff, a 30% damage absorb. Destina come out here as well to provide the debuff cleanse as well as healing for sustain. Remember what we said this match would be about earlier? Both of these players are dancing in sync to the tune. A-Taiwan comes out here as a tank for Uigang, a little bit early, especially when there are no debuff, but this is important later. Next up comes AOL, not the strongest pick into Destina, but her debuff threats limit a lot of options that Nonesis can bring in the later rotations of this draft. If you watch any of my tank down guides, this should look very familiar. Support, tank, support, leaving 2 spots at the end to pick up hyper carries, usually units that can deal enough damage to kill multiple opponents, and looking to close out the game with these really strong carries. On top of that, all 3 early picks have 2-way utilities, meaning they affect both sides of the board. A-Taiwan has Cleanse on his passive, while Defense Break and Stun on S3. Handguy has Cleanse, Attack Up, and Immunity on S3, and his S2 does the opposite to one enemy, Strip and then Attack Down. AOL is even worse. She strips up to 2 buffs and applies Unbuffable and Silence. Her defensive value comes from protecting her team versus AoE attacks and cleansing and applying a layer of Skill Nullifier on top, which is really pesky. This doesn't really seem threatening in any major way, especially since Nonesis hasn't picked up any debuffs yet, so it almost seems like he's buying an insurance policy. Doesn't give him too much value. But if you really actually look at these picks and how they synergize with each other, it actually chokeholds Nonesis' carry options here quite a lot. So look at it like this. Nonesis can't win through debuffs because all the supports have built-in cleanse. He can't play buff-reliant carries because 2 of his units strips buffs. He can't play AoE units because AOL and A-Taiwan would mitigate way too much damage across an AoE. He also has to pick up an ML unit here because if he goes support into a single elemental unit, he's just going to get counterpicked with 2 elemental advantage RGBs in the 4 and 5. So how many units in the game are left that kind of fit this description? Let's think about the best ones, right? Apocalypse Ravi, Well, we can't pick that since Spectre Tenebria and LQC are still in the draft. Stenny? Can't pick that here because Bellion and these AoE units are still in the game, and his supports don't have natural advantage versus any of that. Bellion? Well, not into AOL and NA Tywin since we highlighted that earlier, so that doesn't leave him with too many options. And now Nonesis has 60 seconds to come up with 2 units with diverse enough weaknesses that they can't just die to a singular unit on 4 and on 5. So it's pretty tough. I think he does a pretty good job here. Coming up with Aiden and Ed. So on paper, that's fairly good. Both of these units avoid pitfalls that Uigang's trap has set. So now it's up to Uigang to pick 2 units. Spectre Tenebria is locked in. Great matchup versus both of those carries we just saw. Probably going to have to be the Force Band, but what about our last? Ooh, Lethe comes in. And that's why Uigang is so good at this playstyle. He seems to always be able to find 2 units with 2 winning matchups against his opponent's carries. Stenny can beat both of these units because they're mostly single target damage dealers and they rely on counterattack, which Stenny can bypass. Lethe beats both units because she's tanky, she has elemental advantage, and under the right conditions, her Kraken should be one-shotting both of those units. It doesn't even matter what units Nonesis picks last, it's just going to get banned. ML Leica here is a solid unit, but when banned, she doesn't really fix the problem that Nonesis was exposed to in the draft. Plus, since she's the last pick and Uigang drafted to play top 4, he's just going to ban the last unit. So Lethe's banned out as she's way too much of a threat versus the dual carries from Nonesis. And now Uigang just needs to play tempo and protect the Spectre Tenebria, while Nonesis tries to reach her with his double carries before everything dies off, and that's their game plan going into this. Let's see the matches play.
Those who fear should give
Okay, with that, Hand Guy usually takes the first turn here, no surprise. He's usually built at very high ranks 250 speed, just to have the option to either cleanse or to damage buff S2, just a barrier up, and he is going to opt to S3 here because even though Arrow Wall can strip, no units can strip the attack up off of the Spectre Tenebria, so no matter what, we're getting that value. He gets 50% CR and we just get the cooldowns going faster. Destina has to pass the turn here, so because AOL has such a good turn rotation right after the Destina, it's going to take the escort buff off here for 1, but also force these units to fight through silence and unbuffable for a whole rotation. Just really high value. Tywin passes the soul here, and the only utility you're going to get here is it shaves off the souls that Destina generates. And Nonesis, good identify, he needs to punch out the AOL ASAP, so lay in some damage, but since Uigang is a very tanky player, this AOL is not going down easy.
Look into my eyes.
Big turn with his carry. Spectre Tenebria drops the S3 to activate her passive so her auto attack can start hitting 2 targets. That does a huge chunk of damage into the arrow wall. And killing the tank first in a standard versus standard match is usually good practice just to remove their HP battery.
We still have hope.
Meteor Coerc is going to put up the barrier here to prepare for the Aiden, since the Aiden is going to be bringing a lot of damage. As we see, she tries to go on the Angel of Light there, just to eat her down a little bit more. So Destina is going to heal back the air wall. So as we said earlier, sustain is really important in this game. So clearly Nonesis is playing for the sustain game, whereas Uigang is playing for crowd control. And that is going to be the theme of this match.
With no choice.
Fishes for a silent on air wall, but doesn't really matter. She's already used her S3, and oh, there it is. There, it finally hits. Lucky dual attack pushes her back a couple of combat readiness points. And now that Edge shut the silence, he can really start going in. Ramps up the S3. This is going to get more damage every time he casts it, and it gives him 50 CR as well. Spectre Tenebria is going to come back to her turn, and we are going to activate Aiden's passive. It cannot be counterattacked, so it goes on cooldown. And Nonesis bites back here. 2 very cleverly placed S1 is going to take out Angel of Light. You may think Uigang's now fighting from the back foot, but there's still 2 more units Nonesis has to claw through.
In the light's name.
Big turn for Nonesis here. He's going to take a second to think about whether or not he wants to S3 to protect the AOL, or rather the AOL, and he is going to opt to do that. Unfading Memories. Yeah, that is a high value artifact as far as healing's concerned, so he wants to be healing as much as he can, use up those cooldowns. And this is the power of a hand guy. He's already back to his S3. Puts up attack buff again. Spectre Tenebria is now going to be hitting 2 units with that. He has 3 attacks coming in. Soul Burns 1 time. Tags the Destina, not really that much damage, but does hit the arrow wall pretty hard. Thinks about it for a second. Soul Burns again. Goes on the Aiden. And he is going to activate the attack buff, but that did something else. It activated the Ed. Ed's extra attack comes back, and now A Tywin is enraged. And when A Tywin is enraged, his S3 and S1 can penetrate all of effect resist. Wow, big S3 slam there. Goes into the Ed, and then with the escort taking the damage, kills the arrow wall by relation. So now the Ed needs to sustain back, and he's hitting. And since Destina just blew her S3, the big revive, she needs to try to sustain herself 4 more turns. And it really is looking like Nonesis is running out of time. And as we said earlier, A Tywin with that rage buff is going to come in, drops the S3. The defense breaks, and the stuns are going to be huge. Doesn't actually proc on the Ed, which is kind of ridiculous. But Spectre Tenebria turns coming up. Defense break on Aiden and Destina is damn near a death sentence for Nonesis here. Yep, hand guy just doing a little cheeky CR push. Oh, perfect split onto the Destina and the Aiden. And with that, those units go down, and with just an Ed, I don't think Nonesis has enough wasted tempo before the Spectre Tenebria just finishes him off. And that is a kill. Extremely clean match for Uigang there, showing absolutely why he is in the top of the charts every single season he's played, and why he's so consistent, especially in Korea server, where you're playing slow versus slow, just baiting out his opponent's picks. Crazy draft. It was an absolute treat to look at the way he just threads the needle with those last 2 picks there. I also wanted to do something a little bit different than what I normally make. So if you liked the video, found it enjoyable, please give the video a like and let me know in the comments which matches in the E7WC you want to see analyzed next. If you want to watch any of this live, I will be watching all of the main stage matches with my friends over at twitch.tv/Valky and discussing them in discord.gg/Valky. But for now, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate your watch time. I hope you guys have a great one. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.